our next speaker, who is, like Tejas, also a Berliner. And I don't mean the jelly donut either. So everyone, please welcome from Crab Nebula, Attila! Woo!
Hey.
Oh, you can clap louder than that. Give it up for Attila! Oh, come on, y'all. You got it in you. I know you do. All right, on the count of 3, I'm going to count down from 3, and you all are going to go, woo, really hard so that Attila gets all the energy he needs for this talk. Ready? 3, 2, 1, woo!
Yeah, now we're talking. Awesome. So we're good to go. And good afternoon. How's everybody doing? All right? Yep. So we're going to talk today about Solid Start. And I'm going to talk to you about how Solid Start works, what are the pieces that put it together, and what's the whole idea behind it. For the ones of you who are not familiar with Solid Start, it is a full-stack framework that is built for the Solid ecosystem. So it's not React, it's a different rendering library, and it would be similar to what Next.js, Remix, Nuxt, these things are, but it's built in a little bit more particular way. So let's see what does that mean. Before we start, my name is Attila Facina. I work as a DevRel lead at a company called Crab Nebula. I'm also part of the Solid DX team, and I'm a Google developer expert. Because naming things is hard, I made this like little shortcuts with all the social media with my website, so you can find me there after the talk to make questions, give me feedback, ask about my VS Code config, whatever you want, okay? So, as I mentioned, Solid Start is the framework that we built around Solid. So what it is actually, it's the core package and a few other functionalities that we put together into Solid to build Solid Start. So you can actually disassemble stuff. That's why we say it's a very meta framework, because the concept of a meta framework is bringing pieces together like Lego in order to build like efficient, unopinionated, and ergonomic experiences. So it's basically like Lego bricks, as I said, but a lot of frameworks, what they do is whenever they assemble the Lego bricks, they say, oh no, but to assure like the best experience, I don't want you to take it apart. So they kind of glue them together, and you cannot like split them. In my opinion, that kind of spoils the fun a little bit, because Lego is nice when you tailor it to whatever you want it to be. So Solid Start is built around having great defaults to provide you with enough flexibility to adapt the framework to whatever need you have. Which, in other words, means your opinions are welcome when you're building with a Solid architecture. You can disassemble, and you can change, and you can configure it, and you can deploy whatever you want. So to get to this point, there are 4 fundamental pieces that built around this. First of all, we have the core framework. So it's the bundler, the serializer, and the server. So these are the things that make Solid Start a full-stack framework. And if you don't have that, you don't have Solid Start. But the other part would be Solid as a rendering library, so then you get the user interface. Yeah, and the third part would be Solid Router, where you have all the client-side logic and the data loading. So that's the first and the biggest piece that you would like to switch if you don't want to. So basically, it works with whatever router you want it to work, as long as you provide the necessary bindings. To this point, to the best of my knowledge, no other router has the bindings that we need to operate with Solid Start, but it is possible with a plugin, with something like that, if you build it yourself. And then we have the Solid Meta, which is going to handle all the meta tags. So the example or the ideal Solid Starter template, if you want to try out, brings these 3. And what we're going to look at it is how all these pieces, they work together into building this experience that we need to have a full-stack framework. So first of all, we have the serializer, which is Ceroval. And Ceroval behaves in a pretty special way. And what it happens is it connects all the server functions. So the RPC layer of your framework, it connects to the Ceroval. And Ceroval is going to serialize that and send it to the user. What it does, though, before sending it, is that it caches by reference every artifact that it's going to send, which means that even if you have 3 functions getting 3 different requests from 3 different endpoints, that resource is going to be deduplicated, and you're only going to send and waste your user's bandwidth once. And on top of that, it also has streaming support, which means that you can serialize readable streams, you can serialize promises, and you can serialize streams. You can serialize streams and promises, and even async generators, which brings us to our first demo. So what I have here is a pretty. Where? Can't you see what's going on? Yeah, there you go. So what we have here is just a simple web page. It has a button, and as you can see from the title, it's the Raven. So what's going to happen here is when I click Start, it's going to open a stream connection to my server and send line by line of the Raven poem. And what I want you to look at is here, to my Network tab, as the size of the payload keeps increasing. So these lines don't exist in the client. They don't come in one go. They are being streamed straight from the server. The way we make it is possible. Can everybody see? Is everybody okay with this? Yeah? Okay. So I'll just toss my terminal to the side. And what we have here is we have this line iterator, which is happening in my client-side part. And if you're familiar with React, it's pretty much the same thing. So instead of using state, we're creating a signal. And then we have an effect, which means every time you have something more in the source, you set the new items. And you're setting, like, for every line that comes, you're adding the line to the end. Not the most performant client-side solid app, but that's how it works. And then inside, you just have a for each, which is our list component. But on the server, that's where the things get more interesting. Where am I? Yeah. So we have this poem in .ts, and it works in the same way with a directive. So I say use server, which means my bundler now knows this code will exist only in the server, so it doesn't land in my client-side logic. Now, here I have the poem as a string. And what I'm going to do is I have a generator here. And this is an asynchronous generator, and it's going to write a new promise with an artificial delay. And then it's going to yield one line of the poem every 500 milliseconds. So it's going to keep sending it and streaming it. And that's as much logic as you want to create a stream to your server. So remember, good defaults, great DX, better performance. And my thing is gone again. So we have Ceroval. Oh, I went back too much with this. So yeah, so again, the second part is Vinci, which is the other building piece. Vinci is a wrapper, a very thin wrapper around Vite and Nitro. So Vite, most of you are probably familiar with, is the bundler, and it can work as a dev server as well. It's the bundler that's most used, like pretty much every framework except for Next uses them, I believe. And Nitro is an agnostic Node.js runtime that's built by the Neon.js folks. So it's used by Nuxt, it's used by Analog, it's used by SolidStart, and it's going to be used by TenStackStart, which is the framework from the TenStack folks. And it does a little bit of wrapping on other, like the actual Node runtime and Vinci as well. So what we do with that is Nitro is with Vite and H3, which is another server runtime. So what we do with Vinci is create a set of configurations that the way we use that with Solid Start is re-exporting them, and you can have without any configuration, and your app is going to work like that. But if you want to configure it, you can go very deep into it. So you can set a middleware, you set a specific file for it. With that preset, that line over there says preset Netlify, you can switch to around 30 presets, then you can deploy to anywhere. Cloudflare, Vercel, Netlify, AWS, whatever you have. And then you can even set the pre-render stuff. So if I say crawl links, this is a Nitro feature. If I say crawl links, it's going to find every link in every file I have and crawl it down at build time, and then pre-render the stuff that I have and cache it for me. I can say that if one of the links that I have in my page is a 404, I want my build to fail. And I can even set, okay, just ignore those things with a regular expression, because in this case, this is actually real code. This is from the Solid docs. And sometimes the parser gets confused with Markdown. And then if you see the last line over there, we expose to the end user the entire Vite configuration. So you can have whatever you want. We have virtual modules. You can have anything you want with Vite. So you have Serval, you have Vinci, and then you have the user interface. When it comes to the user interface, we use Solid, because, you know, Solid Start. I think you saw that coming. And the router, the Solid Start package also exposes a file route component, which you can use as file system-based routing. And it operates in a very similar way to what you're probably used to with Remix, Next.js, Nuxt, Svelte, Kit, and all the others. So by default, it's routes, but you can change that. And then if you have between square brackets, you have a parameterized route. You can have a named route. You can have the index route. You can have a catch-all, a parameterized dynamic route. And you can have a named index route. So if it's between parentheses, this means that this route is going to be the index, but then you can name it so you don't have a bunch of indexes. So we already touched a little bit about how our RPCs work when I talked about Serval. So this is how an actual request from the server happens in Solid Start. We recommend you all to, whenever you're doing a Solid Start, you try to lift all your external data loading to the server, because we can do this kind of stuff. So if you have, every time you have an endpoint from your Solid Start, it creates a server function under the hood, similar to Next.js, Remix, and whatever. And then you're going to hit your API. But between your API, we have a cache helper, and that cache is going to set a key for that specific time, lifetime of your round request, and that cache is going to make sure that all requests are deduplicated. So you're only going to hit your API once and get all the data that you need. Once that's ready, it goes through the serialization, deduplicate all the references, and send the data only once. So if these three functions are hitting multiple APIs or only one, you're only going to get one time. On top of that, Solid Router also exposes a bunch of methods. We already saw file routes, we already saw cache. But now you have create a sync, and you have action, and you have that route, because with Solid Start, we recommend all the data loading to be done in parallel. Like, the framework is basically allergic to waterfalls. So your initial data loading would be like this. So if you have a protected route, you'd have a show component, which is our equivalent for an if-else conditional in this case. And then you have your create async that's going to request that data from an RPC request. And then if that data is there, it's going to show or not. But since that's a protected route and that's a route inside your app, you can export from that page a preload, a route with a preload key. And that preload is going to say whenever the user is hovering or preparing to go to that thing, you already start fetching things. So this means that by default, everything is kind of suspended, and the request can be done in parallel with your navigation. So this is like more of a edge case kind of stuff, because you actually don't want your user to see the profile page if they are not actually a user. But in most cases, what you're going to do is just have a suspense wrapping it around. Because then you can have all the rendering already done beforehand, and then whenever the data comes in, you're just swapping them in the DOM, but the resource is already pre-rendered. On top of this, we can also, when you're doing an action, you're doing a mutation to your server, we can return the new page data together with the redirect response. So let's say, and we call that a single flight mutation. So let me show you my last demo. So in here, what we have, oh, no, not here, this. So in here, I have these little Pokemon cards. And what I'm going to do now is, in most frameworks, I'm going to add a new Pokemon. So I'm going to do like my Mon, and I want to have, I think it's this number. So let's take a look at the network tab over here. So if I add it, I have my Mon over here. And you can see that there are two requests. So the first request is the navigation, so the next route's coming in. And the second request is my data. So, so here I have all the data that's coming back. So that's the data post on mutation. And that's how most frameworks work right now. What Solid has, Solid Start, is, let me clean it up. So if I go and I'm going to add my Geekmon, and now if I do my mutation again, I have my Geekmon over here, and I have only one request. That happens because Solid Start is aware that only this data has changed because I told it about the pre-route, and I'm telling it how that works, how my app behaves. So because it knows it can send only the minimum that I need. And to get this working is not, that doesn't need that much boilerplate. What we do is, first, so we have this action, which is what's necessary for me to say this is a form action. Then I say it's going to be a server action. A server action, yeah. Once that's done, I serialize the data, and I connect it to my database. I bring the items back, all the counter. I set my new data, and then I can send the redirect, right? So because I'm redirecting, I'm throwing this redirect. It's already sending the redirect with the data of the new page. Because in my single flight, what I did is, so in my single flight, I have this action, and then I have the method that says it's post, and I pass the action like this. That's what you need to do. And then in the index, I define that my route data is the get Pokemons. So it already knows what data it needs for this one. So that's how you opt into this. If you see in the multi one, I have the navigation happening within it. So it's happening on the client side, so then I'm actually doing more work to dodge this logic. Right? So, yeah. So that's how we get to this, to the stage of what Solid Start is doing with your data fetching and with the whole configuration stuff. So to recap, you have primitives, you have nice primitives, you have good defaults, and you have flexibility, which allow us, for example, to mix and match. So I have this other project. I work a lot with this other framework that's called Tauri. Whoever heard about Tauri here before? Oh, quite a few people. So Tauri is this Rust-based framework to create native applications with web technologies. So it uses Rust to connect your binaries, your code to your system binaries, and it renders your app within a web view from the system web view. So what I did over here is I created this template, which it's a solid start template under the hood. So inside my source here, it's a solid start app, and you can see with all the defaults and whatever you want in this case. So where is it? Here. So my app config has a few stuff that's specific for Solid, and then in Solid Start I can say, yeah, I want you to do the client-side stuff and so on. And this means that by simply changing this one file, I can on CI determine if I'm going to build a web application, a desktop application, or a mobile application, because Tauri is inside this secondary source where I can define here which apps I want to build. So I can build from this app, I can build for every platform with the same code base. The only catch right now is that there's no way to do like the server-side rendering. So that's why for Tauri, I actually need to take out the server-side configuration, but it just works in a multi-build system. So yeah, this is what I had for you. I hope you had enjoyed. So the thing is, the point of this is not actually convincing any of you to use Solid or Solid Start. The point of this is actually looking and helping people in understanding how different frameworks behave, and then if any of these features you find interesting, you can come chat with me, you can try it out, and I'm happy to help. With that, thanks a lot.